Well, hi again, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. This is when myself, Craig Hamilton Parker, has a chat with you about all things spiritual, what's going on in the world, my thoughts from the standpoint of a spiritualist medium about where the world's going and what's coming up. So I'll make a few predictions and give you a few insights. I particularly want to talk today about the Trump versus Biden debate that's coming up. I'll have a think about also the English position with the English football and give you my thoughts about that. And Julian Assange, what's going to happen next with that? And has a deal been done in the background? And what about Trudeau? I get a feeling something's going to be a bit odd happening to him in the coming few weeks. So welcome to Coffee with Craig. Well, hi again, and welcome to the show. I'm not live today. It's too hot, frankly, and sometimes it's good just to take it at a bit of a slower pace because I want to share with you some of my thoughts, but also as the show moves on, I want to share some of my spiritual thoughts. And so those of you that like to listen to what I have to say about the mediumistic side, the spiritual side of life, I'm going to share a few thoughts with you there in what we call kind of inspired speaking. Really, this is what we would have done in spiritualism, where you just sort of talk a little bit about spiritual things, and sometimes things come out with that are very important. Sometimes things about the world, sometimes even in between the lines, you'll hear things that are meant for people specifically that join the show. It's a bit like paranoid TV, I suppose. But you know, sometimes messages come out as I talk. So I'm going to work a little bit like that today. So towards the end, I'm going to talk a little bit more about like that. It's like a light sort of, not strictly a trance, but it's a slightly more fluid type of thinking. But before that, I'm still in my normal Craig state of mind, as it were. And I'll share a few thoughts with you, first of all, about what's coming up in the world, because one of the things happening soon is going to be the Trump versus Biden, or the Biden versus Trump, whichever way you look at it, debate that's coming up on CNN, I think it is, in Atlanta. And they don't have a live audience, a bit like today. It's kind of a lot easier to do a show without a live audience on some levels. But my thoughts are that this is the first time that this has been done. And I ask myself, as somebody watching from overseas, why? Why can't they have a live audience? Why do they have to all of a sudden have no live audience? Is it because, as Trump says, Biden's afraid of crowds, which is not a particularly good thing for a US president? But he never takes press questions, does he? He never. Every time there's press questions, he walks away, a very cowardly way, I think, of dealing with an audience. And I think if I was any person in the watching that, I'd feel very frustrated, because you want to hear what the guys say and have some of the most difficult questions seeded at them. So how will this debate go? It's not long till we have it. My feelings are that Trump's going to play this carefully. You see, I think the worst thing he could do is go in there and tear Biden apart, because he knows he can do that. And the problem is, that would alienate quite a lot of people, because they think, "Oh, this guy's a monster." You know, this debate from a very simplistic point of view, looking both ways, see it. You know, all the Democrats think Trump's mad, and all the Republicans thinks Biden's senile. And so it's the mad versus the senile, right? As far as they're concerned, if they on those extremes of politics, and really, so Trump's got to go in and first and foremost show that he's a calm individual. because he's obviously, he's very good at speaking and very good at demolishing people. But he needs to show his kind side. He needs to go in there and show that he's a reasonable person. He does need to go in like a normal politician this time and talk politics, talk policy, and talk up the issues, as opposed to just destroying Biden. Because we've got exactly the same situation happening here in the UK in many ways. We've got the incumbent Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, who is made a right hash of everything. And the Labour opposition, all they have to do is just keep quiet and say nothing, because they destroy themselves. And that's the way it's been happening. Don't put any policies forward, don't say anything, let them destroy themselves. And this is where Keir Starmer has triumphed in many ways, because he here has just kept quiet up to now and let them destroy themselves. And this doesn't work long term, but in a short term thing, I think it can work. It can work for now. And but I feel that what the issues that are going to come up there, the most important one, I think, is, will Trump get a chance to talk about the lawsuits and the using the law as a weapon? This is obviously the big one that's going to be on everybody's lips. And I think he's going to really succeed in this. I think people will see another side of Trump. I think I'm dying to see it myself. I mean, whatever side of the political persuasion you want, you like or don't like, it's going to be an interesting boxing match, as it were. But I feel it's going to he's going to take a different approach, and that will kind of shock Biden even more. So I'm seeing coming out of this a lot of talk about the lawsuit. I feel that Trump is going to come out on top at the end of the day. But I think it's going to be a much more measured fight, strangely enough. The big fights are going to come when we have an audience, which will come later on, because they'll have other debates like that. Though it will obviously be the talk about economy. That's going to be the big battleground. It will be big battleground areas about wars. I think Biden's going to be well prepared for that and come in and go quite hard at Trump about the possibility of pulling out of Ukraine. So that's going to be the weak points from the Republicans' point of view. Also from the Republicans' point of view, the Israel as well as Ukraine, both of those are going to be very weak areas where Trump will have his say about how we can fix it, because under scrutiny, those are going to come under a lot of attack, and they're going to be quite hard to defend. Do we really come out of Ukraine? So I think that's where they got Biden will get some of his advantages. But I think the overall thing about the breakup of the way things are, the cultural changes that are happening in America that are not welcome by most people, the cultural changes where the immigration has become a vast and overwhelming problem, and also the law and how the rule of law is broken down. And this will be a very, very interesting debate. I think Trump will win on those points in terms of the public's point of view. But I think it's going to be it'll obviously have its moments of full attack, more or less trying to show that Biden is completely senile and should be in bed rather than talking on telly. But I feel that my feeling is I think Trump will win this debate, because I think Trump's going to win hands down when it comes to the American elections in November. So that's my first thoughts on that. I mean, I don't think there's much more I can say about that. Those are my thoughts. People were obviously going to ask, because I'm not live, but people would obviously ask about Jay Slater here in the UK. This is a case where somebody's gone missing. And there's all sorts of stuff coming up on the internet about it. Is there some form of corruption in the background? Is the guy truly who he appears to be? And lots of nasty stuff going on Twitter. But I don't want to speculate on that. So I'm just getting that one out the way, really. I say use the £36,000 they've raised to see if you can find him. But, that's it. Use it for that. I was very interested also in Julian Assange. Now you remember that I hang on. You'll remember that I had I made some predictions that he would be freed from jail, which has happened. I suggested in that big video I did on it that it would be soon, that it would probably be before the American elections, that if he didn't get out now, because I felt Biden would make sure that he was released before Trump could do it, because Trump would do it if Biden didn't. So Biden wanted to take the kind of the glory, or certainly get this out of the way. Clever way they went around it, actually, to get around the law by doing the hearings on an island like that. So I made a correct prediction about that. But then one question comes to mind first and foremost with this. I did hear that WikiLeaks have deleted 20,000 emails, 20,000 emails of Hillary Clinton. Why did that need to be deleted? I mean, can that ever be wiped off the internet properly? Why has that happened? Why was Hillary Clinton's emails deleted like that? My alarm bells ring in my head. Has there been a deal done in the background? Has Julian Assange, after all this time fighting for what he believes in, had to do some form of compromise before they can let him go and go back to Australia? And are there other things, because I said he'd go back to Australia too, that was another prediction I made, which has happened. But has there been something done in the background? And what's going to happen to Assange now? You know, because my thoughts are, Assange has had no option other than to run along with what they're saying. He cannot physically take any more time in jail. He's mentally and physically being broken with this. Will we hear him again? Yes, I feel we will. He'll be coming in a much more measured way. I feel as if he'll have teams of lawyers behind him whenever he speaks. He doesn't need to release anything more. He can still say what he has to say with the stuff that's already been released, with the almost the hint and the message that, you know, this is what I believe. I believe it because of this information that I've read, which I'm not allowed to disclose to you. So he'll become a very powerful voice again, I feel. I don't think this is the last we've ever heard of Julian Assange, and letting him out of prison is going to open up a whole great can of worms. And again, when Trump comes to power, I think he'll be much more open to let the guy have his say, because I think we're going to see much less of this council culture as we've been getting in Europe and in America and all the English-speaking world. This council culture where if you say anything, they throw legal stuff at you, so they shut you up, and the status quo always persists. We've seen it in what's happened with all the horrible lawsuits with Trump, and we're seeing it around the world as well. I feel that there's going to be a big backlash against all that. So, you know, all hail Julian Assange, I say, and I would be lovely to start seeing him doing interviews with people on the internet. Love it if he did it with us, but you know, I think that's a pipe dream. But it would be, you know, let's see the freedom of speech coming back again, and let's see that we need to know what's been going on in the background much more. I know there's the other argument that it's put some people's lives at risk. Of course it has. That's wrong too. It's not the right way to do things. But I think we all feel that we're having the wool pulled over our eyes, and this particularly appeals to. This particularly applies to Canada at the moment, because I feel there's going to be something in the coming weeks where there's going to be some big expose of some sort about Justin Trudeau. I've already said in the past that I feel that there's some corruption being done with Trudeau with China, just as there has with Biden and China, both covered up big time. And also here in the UK, I feel that we've had stuff going on in the background in the UK too, which I think might also come to the fore very soon, because there's been this big cover up, and I feel that Trudeau's world's going to start to fall apart. I think we will see with him a criminal investigation into Trudeau in time. It's something to do with China again, and there's going to be a backlash in Canada. I feel there's going to be again a cultural change, but a cultural change towards back to the older values of Canadians, and I feel that there's going to be a backlash against woke. I said that this was going to start happening in 2024. Was it full swing in 2023? I said no, it's 2024. We're going to see a real return to fight against woke, and we're seeing it. Here in Europe, for example, those that don't follow what goes on in Europe and America, but we've got massive changes going on in France with a swing to the right. We've got big changes already happened in Italy. We've got big changes to the right again, as we call it here, in the Netherlands, and happening all over Europe. Swings heading against the mass immigration, really, because these are all results of mass immigration. The very thing, everything is ignored about immigration. Everything about immigration is ignored. Everybody talks about the cost of living crisis here in our elections. Everybody talks about everything except the NHS, for example, but everything except the real issue that I think is behind it, why we've got bad housing, why the national health don't work, why we've got economic problems. It's the dire problem of out of control immigration and migration that's just pulling down all the countries of the West. America being pulled down by it, and Europe being pulled down by it, and Russia and China, I think, complicit in making sure that everybody's hurried to the borders and helped along. So that's my thoughts. Okay, so those are some of my thoughts about what's coming up. I want to have a chat with you about a few things as I sort of talk about these things a bit more as well. But one last thing also is England, the England football. I know this will be of no interest to anybody in America. It might be, but I think, you know, England's been going. I'm not a great football fan whatsoever, so I'm probably a good person to talk about this because I don't have any idea about football, what works and what doesn't. I don't know who the teams are, who the players are, anything like that. But I often get feelings about it. And when I was looking at it, and I saw the sort of dejected sort of attitude of, you know, of the team, and I could see that Gareth Southgate, for example, is looking really, really dejected. He's won and encouraged his team, but they've had these dreadful losses or bad games that they've been having all the time with various the games they played. You know, it's really, really quite difficult. You know, bad performances against places like Denmark, for example, that you wouldn't have expected them to sort of play so poorly. You know, and Serbia again, you know, poor play all the time. There's occasional moments of coming together, but a real dejection. And if you think about this, in a way, it's a bit like a curse, isn't it? Really, they kind of got on their shoulders a kind of a heavy weight, and really, they need to start doing something to bring not just it's not just pep talks. They need something to sort of get the energy moving. They need something to get a positive energy projected at the teams. Now, I did some funny stuff some years ago in the Daily Mail when we had the World Cup. And I was suggesting all sorts of tongue-in-cheek things we could do, you know, like we could, you know, don't let women watch the match, for example, because it's always considered a bit of a curse in a game if a woman watches the match. So I said that the women there should have their eyes stitched up when they watch so they can't see, which is an old Mexican way of relieving a curse on the evil eye. And I made other ridiculous things about we should do some mantras over the football boots, for example, or that we should use our powers to get an extra player on the field using the powers of the Tibetan ideas of the Tolpa and things like this. And I gave various magic things that were from all different superstitions around the world. Had some great fun with it, actually. I could maybe even do a little spoof one about that one day, perhaps, and put it up, or a 10-minute one or something. But look, the thing is, you've got to get your positive thinking about these things. You know, every person that's seeing this needs to get a positive thought with it, you know. So I'm going to leave you with a positive thought on this, because I actually think, you know, I think England's going to bring it home. I think England are going to win. I really feel they're going to win. They're going to have, it's going to be, and France has fallen behind, I believe, but I think France is going to be one of the big contenders somehow. I get the feeling they're going to be, it could be between England and France possibly at the end, but I'm getting something that I'm seeing possibility of France now, but I think England can do it. Now, remembering that everything we do in life, we can make as predictions as much as we want, but sport in particular is one of those things that's very full of randomness, and so it can go any way. So we need to get our positive thoughts. So those of you that are fans of the football, just keep your positive thoughts there. I think they're going to do it. I think they can do it. I think they will do it. So let's get our positive thoughts on that. And I feel that England will win the Euro 2024. So there you go. Even when they're losing at the moment, I'm telling you now, I feel they'll win the Euros 2024. Right. There's a stick your neck out for you. Quite a quotation, a prediction for you. So also another thing, I know I saw on the news that there's something happening in Bolivia at the moment as well, that there's a bit of an uprising there, which I feel happening, but that's in the news. But I just get the sense there's another one happening somewhere in the world. There's going to be simultaneously, something's going to be happening where there's another. Now, it's not the Bolivia thing, but there's somewhere else. I feel there's an uprising happening. We'll see it in the next 4 weeks. There's an uprising happening somewhere around the world. Now, it's easy to say big all around the world. It could happen anywhere, but it's just like a bit like that Bolivia thing where a government is overthrown. And that's going to happen in the next 4 weeks. It's not Bolivia, it's something else. There's something else in 4 weeks ahead. So those are my thoughts with this. So I just thought I'd now sort of just change the tone a little bit and just give you some thoughts about things, because and kind of flow a little bit with you with this, actually, because when I was thinking about, when I was in meditation today, I always meditate every day, and I was thinking about the problems of the world, and what you know, we often take our problems with us wherever we go, and my thoughts have been, what about after death? What happens after death when we go into the next world? Do we take all our problems and prejudices with us in the same way that it is in this world? Well, with all the communications I get from the people from the spirit world, you know, and I've written a lot of books about this, particularly my book, What to Do When You're Dead. Let me show you this one. I'm going to give it a plug while I'm at it. What to Do When You're Dead. Great title. A very popular book in its time. Just republished it recently on Amazon. But I went into great depth about the spirit world and what it's like. And the spirit world is a utopia sort of place. You know, they have their own structure, they have their own government, they have their own worlds, they have their own halls of healing and all the rest. I went into great detail about what it's like up there. And I thought, well, it would seem strange, wouldn't it, really, that we have so many troubles in this world and yet we sort it all out when we go into the spirit? Why aren't we still warring? Why aren't there wars in heaven? You know? And I thought about it, and I think it's a lot to do, I feel, with the nature of who we are in terms of of who we are when we're in a human body, as it were. Because if you think about it, I was thinking about things like the emotions and the feelings and things like that. They're often triggered by our hormones and things. A large part of how we live and how we exist is hormonal, which is all to do with the body. And I think the biggest illusion that we live is that we are the body. You know, scientists will say we are the body. When the body dies, that's it. Consciousness is gone. But everything I've understood with all my work as a medium is that we survive the body. Anybody that watching this that's had a near-death experience will know for certain that we survive the body. Anybody that's had absolute 100% proof of life after death through mediumship and spiritualism and so forth will know we do survive. We survive the body. But we are a spirit within the body. And this body is like one sheath. It's like in India they call it koshas. This is one sheath. This is the what they will call the Annamaya Kosha, the kosha that is made out of food, because they say it's like the food that the parents had to create their body creates the food that creates you. It's like the food. It's almost like, it means kosha means matter, really. So it's the matter body. It's the physical body. And in this, when we're in the world here, we're in this one layer. There's 5 layers altogether, but there's sometimes people describe it like this, but basically 5 layers in Vedic teaching, that we're in this physical body. And our physical bodies, when you think about it, are an incredible thing. But we have all these chemical reactions that are happening that instantly make us change. So, for example, the fight or flight mechanism within the body is completely out of our control. If suddenly we're we fall in front of a railway line or something, and the train's about to come towards us, instantly where our body jumps into a whole new system with the heart pounding, and the fear and the sometimes even superhuman powers when all these bodily functions start to kick in, and it's instantaneous. When we think about it, most of what we're doing in life is pretty much out of control. That's the fear system that comes in, and that same fear thing comes in our normal day-to-day stuff. On a much lower, endlessly working system like that, it becomes anxiety, which is that fight or flight system that runs out of control. It's all to do with our hormones. It's all to do with all the endocrine system in our body and in our stomachs that creates all these different feelings and emotions and reactions, which most people are living by. This is our behavioral self, as it were. And these are the things, surely, that create the difference between people in this world and the next. We're still living within the idea of a physical body that can influence us instantly. It's interesting to watch ourselves, actually, to see just how much our thinking is dependent upon a physical body. Like, for example, I had a stomach problem this week, and it changes the hormonic way the body works, I feel, when that happens. And it can make you feel different to when you're normally in your normal clear state of consciousness. We are, all of us, great and small, brilliant and daft, all of us are controlled by our hormonal system to some level, and so our bodies create many problems, and our understanding of our relationship with our body creates many of the problems in our life, and also many of the problems within the world. At death, the Annamaya Kosha, the physical body, falls away, and this physical body, they say, is not connected to the Atma. It's not connected to it cannot self-realize. It cannot in itself become conscious of the bliss of existence. This body is shed like a sheath. It falls away. So when the body falls away, what would you be like without a body? Would you still have those anxieties that come from an overactive endocrine system of some sort? What would happen? Would you still have that flight or fight mechanism that I described that can ultimately, if constantly stimulated, can create background anxiety? Would you still have strong sexual urges, for example, because that again is all part of the hormone system of the body? We would still be beings, but we'd be beings without that body interaction. So perhaps the spirit world, perhaps the reason it is a place of peace and light and so forth, as it's described, is because we've broken away from those body functions. So one of the ways I think that we can become better human beings in many ways is to understand the interaction between the spirit and the body, to understand that our body sometimes is making us think and be and feel things that is not necessarily our true nature. Because behind all this is all those other koshas, as they call them. They are briefly the pranamaya kosha, which is the energetic body, I suppose you could call it, which energizes the body, the spirit body, what we see in the aura. There's the manamaya kosha, which is the mind, which is like it's like the thoughts. It also creates the illusion of existence. It also creates the sense of ego. It also creates a sense of selfhood. It also projects into the world. It also has what we call rajas and tamas. So it's also the personality identity, but that's beyond the body. That without all those other things, it would perhaps not be quite as polluted if it wasn't also interacting with our attachment to the hormonal systems and the rest of the body. And beyond that is the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is like the super intuitive side. There's the knowledge sheath, the idea of the discriminating intellect. It's where the will comes from. It's where the sense of self in terms of the jiva comes from. So that's all there. And then behind all that, there's another one that's even more blissful, as it were, which is the bliss sheath, the causal body, which is the Annamaya Kosha. Anandamaya Kosha. Ananda is like bliss. So, and that's a reflection of God itself, a reflection of the Brahma, a reflection of the Atman. So behind us, we are that infinite being that lives in this beautiful, blissful state. And yet, our consciousness comes down through all these different sheaths, as it were, they call these different layers, these different layers of the onion, as it were, which are our koshas. And then we interact and live through this physical body. So what we need to do as people is to be less living in the physical body, as it were. I'm not saying reject physical things or anything like that. Still enjoy physical life, of course, but have the realization that that's not me, that I am not the body. We are not the body. And that way, the other koshas become more dominant. The prana kosha that gives the life force can become more dominant. Therefore, we become less likely to be ill. The Annamaya Kosha, the one that is the mind and the will, can become stronger because we're not bound to the hormones. We're not reacting hormonally to the world, as it were. I'm describing it mainly in hormones, but there's many functions to it, but they're particularly easy perhaps to understand and grasp. But we're not so pulled into that. And if we're not even connected with that kosha, we go right back into Vijnanamaya kosha, the intuitive knowledge kosha. Well, then that's where the intuition comes from. That's where this psychic work comes from. This where knowledge can just be pulled like an apple from the tree, right? The tree of life. We can pull the knowledge. It's already there. We don't have to think it through. We're connected, as it were, to the great intuitive mind of the supermind. And behind it all, to know that whatever the suffering in this world, whatever troubles we have, actually it's all just behind it all. We are that final kosha. We are that finer kosha of bliss, pure bliss that is merged ultimately with the ultimate void of the infinite love of existence. So just as when we go to the spirit world, we shed the physical body and we can enter the causal and astral bodies and the astral realms and be free of things, so we can do it in this world. We got to release our attachment to that Annamaya Kosha, as it were, that physical existence. I'm not saying it's a rejection of the physical. You still enjoy your glass of wine, you still enjoy your physical pursuits, you still enjoy your sensual things. All that's all true, but understand who you really are, so that you're not bound by it and you're not controlled by it. And that's the problem with the world at large, isn't it? It's all controlled by the bodily things. Every advert that you watch on TV is about bodily things. It's about strong psychological things too, which are connected to the body, senses of prestige and success and all the other things. And all these are physical things. All these are feelings of me as my physical self. Spiritually, once we hit the spirit world, the spirit, which these koshas are, once we understand the spirit and we live from that standpoint, then we can become very happy beings. We can become beings that are much more in control with our lives. That's why we've got to live from the spirit, not live for the outside. That's the physical body lives for the outside because it's there to survive. The spirit lives for the inside. So we got to live from the inside out, not from the outside in. And if we do that as individuals, we can be happy no matter what the consequences and things that are happening in the world. So there you go. That's my setup. I was going to do something that was a bit of a talk. It kind of just comes to me. It's the spirit influenced me when I do this. But yeah, so hopefully there's some thoughts of inspiration there. Those that have still stayed watching and said, oh, he's fed up. I'm fed up with it now. He's not doing his predictions. So anyway, that's some thoughts for today. I hope you don't mind me sharing that type of thing. Please comment and let me know. Craig, shut up. I'd rather you just do your predictions or whatever. But those are my thoughts, because I think it's important to look always at everything we do from a spiritual standpoint if we can. And if you'd like to join me also for more in-depth type of things like this, I'm doing my online webinars, which are more clairvoyance, in which I start communicating with the spirit world and giving messages to the people that join me. So they're like a sort of group reading, but they've also interspace with a bit of philosophy and thought as well. So I've got my next one's coming up on the 15th of July. Have a look on my website. It's on the top of the screen, psychics.co.uk, or in the description. I got that webinar coming up, and also another webinar coming up on the NAADI soon. That's filling up very quick. So you want that one, you'll have to join pretty soon. It's all about, people sharing their ideas about the NAADI and having a chat about some of it and how it works. NAADI readings are still now available on in the description. I think some of those are going through still. So you can always book as well. Anyway, so go and have a look at the website. And if you want that book, well, which one did I do? what to do when you're dead. you can find out. Don't wiggle around too much. That's probably a good thing not to do. Okay, thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.
If you look back at my earlier predictions, and in particular the predictions I made on the newspaper, the Sun's website, I did actually say on there, the actual words were, there will be a flu epidemic linked to bioterrorism.
And my thoughts are that Liz Truss will make it to the final, be the next PM. I think she will actually have a final battle between her and Rishi Sunak. We've not seen the full end of Boris Johnson either, I tell you. But Rishi Sunak actually will eventually, I feel, be the next leader of the Conservatives. So I think there's going to be a few conflicts that Britain's going to be drawn into, including I think Russia is going to take some moves against Ukraine.
I think she will make it past her platinum jubilee, which comes up this year. But I think after that, we'll see a sudden and quick deterioration in the Queen's health. And I think we might lose the Queen towards the end of 2022. There's going to be a huge backlash from over the Netflix programs and screening, because I feel it comes out at a bad time. Charles will come to become King Charles, but his reign, I feel, will be short.
I said that Prince Charles would be hit by an egg. And of course, there it is, all in the press today. Marvellous person she is. She does something that extraordinary, that could even put her life a little bit at risk with the way she did this. Okay.
Is there something also there that's not been spoken about fully? Did they also discover something with Kate that wasn't quite right?
A huge swarm of people knocking the doors of Europe and America. And I feel that Ukraine conflict is going to be a kind of a grinding conflict that goes on and on. I also feel that there's something going to happen in the Middle East as well. I feel as if there's going to be a sudden and unexpected thing happen in the Middle East. So I feel they're going to take it into their own hands, and I feel we're going to get a strike from Israel. This is going to be one of the significant things in 2023.